Now that we've gone over everything within the Draconis, the grand overview, such as time, scene manager, screen log, things like that, it's now time to talk about the stuff that the users are mostly going to be using, the game objects. So we're going to start off with the initial three, I suppose. Updatable, and then later we'll move on to drawable and alarmable. So first, updatable. We have these four values, which will be a reoccurring theme throughout all of these components of the game object. We have our registration states, which if we move over to this, we can see we have four. Deregistered, pending registration, currently registered, and pending deregistration. We have our update register command, our update deregister command, and then we have our list value within the update manager's list. The two commands here are all stored right here. So I guess this is also a good time to go over these. So if we go to update register command, for example, you can see that we all inherit from the scene command base, which is just very empty. We have our big four, and then we have execute, which is the only function that gets called by the scene command broker. All of these commands go through the scene command broker. So these are all registration commands. And then you can see that when we register, we just say, okay, updatable attorney, which is the updatable right here. Scene registration, that's it. And same with the deregister, scene deregistration. And that's the similar thing for all of these commands. This one needs the input and key events for input. And this one also needs that, input and key events. We have disconnect from scene, connect to scene. It's all very straightforward. Nothing really fancy here to talk about. Collision registration. And then this one also needs the alarm ID and time, and alarm ID and time. So those are very, very straightforward. There's not much to go over there. So we're going back to the updatable. We have those two register and deregister commands. We have update, which will be overridden by the user. These two functions, which will never be overridden by the user. And then we have our submit update and submit update deregistration. Also, we have the big four, which is virtual. Yes. Moving into the CPP file, this setup is going to be seen very often throughout. We start off with initializing everything. We create our commands. We create our registration state to deregister. And then the user will call update registration. So we make sure that we are currently deregistered. Then we submit the command to register. We're asking for permission. And we set to pending. And then when scene command broker calls execute, the command from before will call update registration. So now this is not the user calling it, this is the command from before. So now that that's getting called, we call register on the scene itself to actually put us into the updatable manager's list. And that we hand in our pdelete ref so that we can get quick delete access later on, set our registration state accordingly. This one will also be called by the user, make sure we're registered so that we can be registered, submit the command, and then pending. And then when the next frame comes around, scene broker will get executed, go through all the commands, call execute, and our command will call update deregistration. Make sure that we're in the correct state, and then that's when we deregister ourselves with our fast delete reference, and then make sure we're deregistered. And that is the basic overview, and it's going to be repeated quite frequently throughout all of these. So let's go over to drawable. Again, those four from before, virtual void draw and draw2d, two functions for the user to overload. for 3D objects, for 2D objects. These two functions that the user does not call but are called by the commands. And then these two functions that the user does call. And again, moving in here, it's very similar. I'm not going to go over it step by step again. You can look at it, make sure it's doing its job, and we're deleting our commands after everything's over. The alarmable is one of the ones where it gets a little different, because now we have a struct with those four, and then we have a small little array of it. We have the array equal to the number of alarms, because every alarm has a different registration state, has a different reference within the list, has a different command. So we have an array of all of these instead of just one. Then we have our 3 alarms here, alarm 0, alarm 1, alarm 2, these 2 that the user does not call, and these 2 that the user does call. Then we go to the CPP file, and it's fairly similar. Within the constructor, we have a for loop so that we can initialize everything within the array to deregistered, get a new command, things like that. Then within the submit alarm registration, we change the time on the command so that it has the updated information, so that when we call it later on, or when it calls us rather and gives us the time, then we can put in the correct time to the alarm manager. Other than that, it's much of the same. And then we have our trigger alarm here. We make sure that we are currently deregistered. We set it to be currently deregistered since the alarm is triggering. And then we call the alarm on the appropriate, we call the appropriate alarm. So we say, okay, what alarm are we calling? Switch, and then case. And then at the end, we have another little for loop so that we can delete all of the registers as well. So those are the big 3. Next we'll be going over the others, collidable, inputable, and GameObject itself.